After spending nearly 30 years in prison for a murder, prosecutors now say that he did not commit. A Baltimore man is finally free. The state's attorney's office gave his case a second look, and it changed his life once again, but this time for the better. WMAR 2 News' Elizabeth Worthington explains the long and difficult investigation that brought us here to this point. Elizabeth?
Yeah, Kelly, reopening all of these old wounds for the victim's family was not something that prosecutors were going to do lightly. But once armed with new evidence and new revelations, they knew it was the right thing to do. This was the moment James Langhorne and his family had waited for. He's free and they're reunited for good.
I worked 30 years to get to this point. So I'm gonna enjoy every moment and put, the anger behind me.
Langhorne has been locked up since he was 23 years old. He's now 51 and has grandchildren. Back in 1996, his life was just getting started. But a murder that had occurred 3 years earlier would bring everything to a screeching halt.
There was a ton of pressure on police to solve this murder. It had gone cold. Making an arrest was a really big deal.
In November 1993, Lawrence Jones was shot and killed in the former Perkins Homes neighborhood of Baltimore. A jailhouse informant, hoping for a sweeter deal, and a couple of corroborating witnesses led police to Langhorne. He fought his conviction for years. Finally, in 2019, came a glimmer of hope. A new unit in the state's attorney's office dedicated to exonerating the wrongfully convicted agreed to take a fresh look at his case. The investigation wasn't easy, and it took Lauren Lipscomb and her team 5 years to complete.
So if you can imagine that even the case back in the 90s was an incredibly difficult case for the police to investigate, I think you probably could imagine that increase that by 150% of the difficulty it is to then go back and attempt to investigate that case present day.
Some of these witnesses, they had to chase all the way to New Zealand because they hadn't moved.
They discovered unreliable witnesses, inconsistent testimony, and new evidence to clear his name. One witness said police bribed him with drug money to get him to cooperate. Another said police coached her with a script of what to say and threatened to take her kids away from her if she didn't do as she was told. And there were alternate suspects the defense didn't know about. In the beginning of this year, the state's attorney's office moved to reverse his conviction. On Monday, a judge agreed. And notably, the victim's family also agreed. They say Mr. Langhorne was a victim too.
They did something that most of us wouldn't be able to do, which is to open our minds to the idea that this thing we believed, this thing that gave us a sense of closure after a truly awful, tragic experience, that thing that got us through that time isn't true.
And the hope from those in attendance today is that lessons learned from this case keep this from happening to anybody else in the future.
That is so awful. So what happens to the case now, and is he planning to sue?
The case is back open. The state's attorney's office forwarded it to the cold case unit, so it is now once again a really cold case. But we got justice for James Langhorne in this case, but this did not get justice for Lawrence Jones' family. So they did have alternate suspects in the case back in the 90s. So hopefully all the work that they just did over the past 5 years can give them a kind of a leg up. But we did ask during the press conference, a reporter asked him, "Are you planning to file a lawsuit against the city?" He didn't answer that. He said, "I'm going to have to talk to my attorneys about that." But I'm sure he's got a lot on his mind. He was just released from prison on Monday.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
All right, Elizabeth Worthington, thanks for sharing that story.